Purpose of this video is for you to be able to predict bond type based upon an element's location upon the periodic table. Now, in order to do this, you're going to need to know the element's formula. And the formula is basically what elements are involved. It depends upon the element's type. Now, as you remember, we had three different types of elements. There was metals, nonmetals, and semi-metals. And if you know the elements type, then you can basically figure out what type of bond. For example, if you had two of the same nonmetal, you'd expect it to be covalent. If you had two different nonmetals, you'd expect it to be polar covalent. And if you had a metal and a nonmetal, you'd expect it to be ionic. Here's an example. Looking at salt, what's the bond type that holds salt together? Well, in order to know this, you would need to know salt's formula. And you've got sodium and chlorine. Sodium is a metal and chlorine is a nonmetal. Therefore, you'd expect this to be ionic bonding. Now, water, H2O. If you find water and oxygen, if you find oxygen and hydrogen on the periodic table, you're going to remember that they're both nonmetals. Therefore, you'd expect this to be polar covalent bonding. Helium is the third one. Let's say I'm looking at some helium balloons. I'm like, what's holding these things together? So you find helium on the periodic table. It's up there in the top right-hand corner. This one's a little bit tricky because helium is a nonmetal, and it's the same nonmetal, but helium doesn't form any bonds because it's got a full octet. And therefore, you'd expect no bond present. Oxygen gas, its formula is O2, so you'd expect it to be held together by covalent bonds because oxygen is the same nonmetal bonded together. Methane is CH4, and you'd expect methane to be polar covalent because it's got two nonmetals that are bonded together. Isopropyl alcohol, or also known as rubbing alcohol, is three nonmetals together. Therefore, you'd expect the bonding to be polar covalent. Calcium carbonate, chalk, has got a metal and two nonmetals. Therefore, you'd expect it to be ionic bonding, holding it together.